So a couple of weeks ago I had a question from Kev the Argonaut, and I thought it was a pretty good question. I was going to do it on the live show, then I decided, no, we'll make a video of it, because it's quite a long question. And what he was asking is why I chose to retire to Spain, and what's the downsides. Now I thought what I'd do today, I'll add to that, and say, would I retire to Spain now? So this is what the video is about. So if it's your first time visiting my channel, my name is Sean. I've been living out in Spain now for over 5 years. I live in the southeast of Spain, the Costa Calida, the Murcia region, just outside the lovely town of Mavron, not far from the port. Also, don't forget to check out my playlist. There's loads of videos on there you can watch, guys. Also, please check out my social networks, which is Twitter, Instagram, my Facebook group. You're most welcome to join my Facebook group. I put all the up-to-date information on there, and not forgetting TikTok. Why I chose to move to Spain? Good question, that, Kev. And I've made quite a few videos. If you check out my playlist, I've got a few videos on about me moving to Spain, but I didn't really explain why I moved to Spain. So I'm going to go through that now. Now, back in the 80s, my parents had moved down to Malaga way to live. And I used to come out to Spain in the 90s with my family. And then over the years, as life goes on, I got divorced, got remarried. And I still come out to Spain. I brought my wife with me as well, and she loved it here as well. But we could see that eventually we would have to do something, because what it was, we took out a new mortgage on the property that was living back in the UK, and we wouldn't be able to finish that mortgage until we was in our 75s. Now we were still working, so we still had time, so we were still coming out to Spain. We came out quite a bit in 2005 and 6 and 7. And where my folks lived down in Malaga way, in the Costa del Sol, price of property there at that period was going up and up, and we couldn't really see, by paying off our mortgage and moving out, could we buy out a property outright. So we looked down the road of mobile homes, and we looked at quite a few. We come over every 6 months looking at them, and we were dealing with a guy in the UK, and at first we thought it was pretty kosher, good setup. There was a new site just starting up, we was getting all excited about that. And then we found out he was a con artist, which put a big downer on things. And I think then we stepped back, we sort of rethought maybe we'll try and buy an old property out in the country, like a finca or something, because we were still pretty fit and healthy then. And then obviously we got back into work, and then come 2012, both of us were made redundant, which was a big shock for us both. Both of us had worked all our life. We were made redundant. We had 2 cars. We had a pretty big mortgage. Where we lived out in the country, the amount of money that we were spending on the TV, the licenses, the running the cars, everything else, we just couldn't see how we could carry on. You know, thankfully we had private pensions, but the mortgage, if we paid the mortgage off, would left us with nothing, and we were still been spending. So we thought, that's it. We wanted to move to Spain, so that's what we did. So what we done first is we hired a camper van for a month in February, and we come down the east coast of Spain, right down to the south of Spain, looking at places on the way. My wife had a huge folder of property to look at. Unfortunately, all the property, nearly all the property that we wanted to look at for agents, didn't get in contact with us when we was on the road. We virtually had to look at places while we was there, really, which was a bit annoying. And some places, I think one place we stayed at near Granada, which is sort of halfway in Spain, it was freezing. Couldn't believe how cold it was. I just can't live here. I mean, this is a good thing about, if you are coming to Spain, come out in the winter time and the summer. So anyway, thankfully we found this place. We've been living in this place now for nearly 6 years. I say it's the best decision I've ever made, and I think the wife will agree with me of that. We got our own property, we got a swimming pool. Yeah, the downsides of Spain, to be quite honest, I can't really think of any downsides, because wherever you go, you know, be it back in the UK or here, politics, I don't like politics, all the same, and it's just the same here. And I think the reason why I've been doing these videos over the years is trying to explain to people that even though Spain, similar I suppose to the UK government, each region has its own government as well, which makes it even more confusing, because when you're applying for things, even though you try to go by the book, they do it differently. And there's always ways around it. When we first arrived here in Spain, our solicitor said to us, well, I asked the solicitor, what's the options of being a non-resident or a resident? And he said at the time, there's none. So he just stuck to being non-resident. And then within the first year of staying here, the Brexit come along, and then we had 3.5 years flapping around. And it wasn't really until end of last year, really, when we started to realise how lucky we was when we had already sorted out a residency or Spanish driving licence. We're on the Spanish health system, and now everything's different. So I can't think of any downsides. I think, you know, the electric's expensive. I think it is anyway. The water seems expensive, but then, got to be honest, guys, we're in a drought area. Never had a water cut. I mean, the pipes do go here now and again, but we here seem to have no problem. You can buy water really cheap anyway. We always drink bottled water, but we have a cup of tea out the tap, you know, in the kettle. Bonnie drinks it. She's still here, thankfully, so can't be no problem with the water here. Going to the hospital, very good system here, I have to admit. Jan goes there quite a lot. We have to take a translator with us. Now Jan speaks a lot better Spanish than me. I'm really pants at it, and you do need a translator, so that's sort of another downside really, but that's our own fault really. I thought coming to Spain, my folks, when they come to Spain, where they lived in a village just outside of Malaga, and nobody spoke English at all. So they had to learn Spanish, and they spoke really well. I was amazed at my dad. He spoke really good Spanish. Unfortunately, my dad's passed away now. My mum's gone back to the UK, so we're just me and Jan out here in Spain now. But yeah, it's hard trying to learn Spanish. We get through, but we have to have a translator, because the doctors won't speak to you in English. They will speak to you in English, but when they do anything medical terms, it has to be done in Spanish. Like everything that you do official, any documentation has to be done in Spanish, read to you. Obviously, if you don't understand it, then you have to have a translator to translate it back to you, so you understand what you're doing. Other than that, I suppose the only annoying thing is this afternoon thing. Now, I call it a siesta. I get a lot of people having a go at me saying, oh, it's not a siesta. To me, that's what I call it. 2 o'clock, most places here shut up for 2 or 3 hours. Then they reopen again, and that would be a workshop, DIY shop. Now, obviously, the big shopping centres are open all day, but the smaller places, you know, or on the industrial estates, things like that, all shut. In the winter, I don't get it. Summertime, yeah, fair enough, it is hot, and I can understand having that break. But this time of year, I don't understand it. That, to me, is a downside, but it's something I've got used to now. I think when I was first there, we didn't get out of bed. Well, we got out of bed a bit later in the day. We didn't really go out until after the afternoon. Things are shut. And it's the same with some restaurants you go into. You can't just sort of turn up to a Spanish restaurant really until about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, whereas we used to turn up at like 1 o'clock, and there's nothing ready. But that's something that no big hassle. Anyway, going on, would I move or would I retire to Spain now? I think the end of last year, it was all coming to us what the big changes were. It was never talked about during the Brexit period, but once the freedom of movement, as they called it, had stopped from January of this year, yeah, it come to us sort of big time. Now, thankfully, because me and the wife had already organised our residency, our Spanish driving licences, what's the other thing we'd done? We'd done something. Oh yeah, we're on the Spanish health system, so we're fine. But obviously, if we'd come now, that would be different, and that I think at first that would have put us off big time, because the other thing is we would have to apply for a visa, and it would have been a non-lucrative visa. They call it like the retirement visa. You have to have I wouldn't say it's a huge sum of money, but you have to have a sum of money in your bank account. You've got to do quite a few things that we didn't really do before. A criminal record certificate, a health certificate, and all this had to be done back in the UK at a cost. And then once it's all done, you would come out here for the first year and you have to do it all again. So that would be different. The other thing that would have been a bit off-putting would have been taking a Spanish driving test. I've done all that sort of stuff when I was younger. Doing an online test and going out with an instructor to drive. I think, end of the day, I would have probably coped with it, no problem. But it would have been a bit off-putting, and I think also it would have done a big difference on the property that we bought. There's no way we could have bought this property with a swimming pool, big plot of land. We couldn't have done that, and I know that. So we would end up buying a smaller property, probably a property without a pool. Maybe we would have done things a little bit differently. The reason I've done these videos over the years is because I'm still learning all the time. I don't think we'd have bought over half the stuff that we'd bought from the UK. Guys, if you can, just bring over a van load. Most places here come fully furnished. If you buy a brand new property, yeah, it's completely stripped bareless. But if you buy a second home, a second older property, I should say, most of them come furnished. So that saves on the property. So yeah, that would have put us off at the beginning, and obviously with the COVID, it makes things worse. Well, I'm just going to stop now because my dog's having a bit of a barking session. So she's finished barking. Had a bit of a break there. But I think we would have still moved to Spain, because the way things were back in the UK, I don't think that would have been any different. I don't think we would have got a job. Maybe we might have moved to a smaller property then, I don't know. But I think we would have still aimed to come to Spain. At the moment, the weather's been such pants. It seems to be, to me, it seems to be a long winter. But I think every year I say this: once April's out of the way, once May kicks in, the weather starts to change. This year, we seem to have had a lot more cloudy weather. But I think that happens every year. So another tip from me, guys, is if you're thinking about moving to Spain, come out during the 2 seasons, come out at winter time, but don't come out December, because the weather's usually pretty good in December, but come out sort of January, February time, just to get an idea of the weather, because it can get cold, and if you're moving up in the mountains, especially up the north of Spain, it gets really cold. So you've got to think about heating, and I go on about heating a lot, because you've got to go, even if you're down in the south of Spain, especially in the winter months, you're still going to need some sort of heating. Obviously come in the summer, probably come in the worst 2 months, which is July and August. It would well up in the 40s. Some people love it, but when it's there all the time, it can get a little bit unbearable, and I've known quite a few people that have been here just can't take it. Even though they've got the aircon on, they just can't take it. I mean, I don't know what the time is now, because I ain't got to watch them out. I never bother with watches. Here's my dog. My dog's just come up to join me now. I think it's getting on to about 8 o'clock now in the evening. It's not bad. I'm in my shorts. I've got my short sleeves on. It's been pretty good today. We had so much wind today. I find this time of year, when the wind picks up, it gets a little bit more chillier. But today, it's been a nice warm day, which is good. I think another thing that I love, especially with Bonnie, is we like going out for our walks. We go out twice a day. We go out in the morning, don't we? About 7:30 in the morning we go out, just as the sun comes up, and we go out. At the moment we're going out sort of about 6ish, but later on we'll probably be going out about 8, 9 o'clock sometimes, especially sort of July, August time. It gets really hot for the dogs, doesn't it, eh? But anyway, I hope that's given you some information. As always, guys, if you've got any tips for other people, especially, I would love to hear from people that are moving out to Spain now, or obviously thinking about moving out to Spain now, that are going through the visa process. There's another visa that I haven't really talked about yet, and I probably will bring out a video on that, and that's about the golden visa, because with that you can come to Spain, you can buy your property, and then you can go through the whole process here in Spain, whereas the non-lucrative has to be done back in the UK. So, but obviously with the golden visa, which did surprise me, even though you're buying a property or a couple of properties worth over 500,000, which it sounds a lot, but when you compare the price of properties back in the UK, especially where I lived, I mean, well, I wasn't far from Sandbanks, and some garagey places, I think Beach Hut was going for nearly $500,000. It's not that much, but you still need quite a bit in your bank account. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. As I always say, got to keep watching, guys, and yeah, I'll catch you on the next video.